Hey, everybody, we're going to pick up our conversation we started last week. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back and listen to that episode, and then you can listen to this episode. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday.
I remember doing a tax return for a friend, and it was a Saturday morning, and I was tired because this was like April 15th. This is like the end of the line. And I remember standing up, and suddenly my back went snap, just like that. And by the way, I was doing her return for free. Okay. And I always say your body's going to give up on you before, you're mentally going to be exhausted. And my body literally gave up for me. And that's what made me look and just start talking to my community. Things have got to change. I've got all these people working for me and we're just not performing, or they're not performing. And someone said, you got to read this book, Profit First. And I'm telling you, I bought that book on audio. I bought that book on paper. I bought it on Kindle because I had to read it everywhere. Planes, trains, automobiles. I had to read this book everywhere. And it was the biggest change because, I knew it was going to work. And I think maybe that's the difference with being an accountant is it's physics. If I have all these bank accounts and I know how much I'm getting every month and I'm putting money aside to profit first, meaning my profit first bank account is getting funded first, my owner's pay bank account is getting funded first. And then the last bank account that's going to get funded are my operating expenses, then physics, law of movement, the law of just moving money, it's going to work. So I knew it was going to absolutely work. And it was a major game changer because it allowed me to create a business that I could sell. It allowed me to become the first millionaire in my family. And now I can, I've seen it worked on hundreds of other clients too. So it absolutely works. Do not pass on this system. And it's an amazing system. It will change your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for anyone who doesn't know about the system, can you kind of walk us through, the different key aspects of it and kind of how they work?
Yeah. So it kind of works like Dave Ramsey's system. A lot of people have heard about Dave Ramsey and they've heard about his envelopes. You get paid and you put money in the envelope for food. You put money in the envelope for rent. You put money in the envelope to go out to the movies, right? With your husband or wife. And we don't want you keeping envelopes if you have a business. That's dangerous, okay? If you keep your money in envelopes, please go ahead and email Mark and Ben with your address, okay?
Yeah.
Those
envelopes.
Do not keep your business money in envelopes. We don't want to see $1,000 envelopes lying around. But what happens in Profit First is we have bank accounts. So you have one bank account where all your money goes in. So as you're swiping your client's Visa cards or American Express, it's all going in one bank account. And then what happens is you have these, I call them feeder bank accounts, right? And these bank accounts are not just bank accounts, but they really are purpose-based bank accounts. So like you might have a bank account for profit, right? And that's going to be where you're going to put your profit at and how you're going to fund your profit envelope in that bank account. You're going to have a bank account for owner's pay. That's where you're going to fund your salary because, as entrepreneurs, people always ask us, who's your most important player? And they'll say, it's Susie, it's Mike, it's Tom. No, it's you. You are the MVP. The day you step out, the day your back cracks, we're all going to be looking at each other like, okay, how do we run this business, right? You are the MVP. And so you're going to get an owner's pay. You're going to get a salary because whoever buys your business is going to expect a salary. The next thing we're going to create is a bank account for taxes because reality is if you drive that bodega, right, you drive that nice car, right, you're going to have a responsibility to pay taxes, okay? And so we're going to fund that tax account. We're not going to figure out how we're going to pay last year's taxes with this year's money. No, we're going to save along the way. And then
that's one of the things that I would say was a game changer for me. Like, I started my business back in 2007 and it was just kind of a side hustle thing, but it was always so stressful at, the end of the year when I'm doing taxes and trying to do write-offs. And then it's like the government's like, hey, we need a $11,000 check. And I'm like, $11,000 bucks? Where am I going to get that from? And then as soon as we implemented the Profit First system, it was like, my accountant's calling me like, hey, we need $30,000. I was like, oh, great. Yeah, here's a check. Like, there you go.
Isn't it amazing?
So that's big. Yeah. It reduces so much stress,
It does. And I'll tell you, before Profit First, I almost hated telling people, okay, you're going to owe, because the reality is you make a lot of money and it's earned income, you're probably going to owe. Especially if you're not paying into the system along the way. There's no refund, right? There's no refund.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that tax account is really important. And that last bank account is about operating expenses. So after you fund this profit account, right, because we're funding Profit First, then we're funding your owner's pay, then we're funding tax, whatever's left over can go to operating expenses. And so what happens is it's working with your natural human tendency. And it's something called Parkinson's law. The more there is of something, the more I'm going to use of it. So, it's kind of like take me to Golden Corral. No, don't take me to Golden Corral. But let's say you accidentally took me to Golden Corral, right? And I'll tell you, when I go to Golden Corral, the food is nasty, but I eat a whole lot of it. Okay, that's just how it works, right? And I'm so glad that when the person takes the plate away, so I can get another one, so it doesn't look like I have a stack of plates. And so, you eat a whole lot more when you go to Golden Corral versus, let's say we're going to go to a business dinner. We're going to go to an hors d'oeuvre dinner and we're going to have 6-inch plates. We're going to eat a whole lot less, right? We're going to leave full, right? Because you don't leave an event hungry, wanting to stop by someplace to get a place to eat. You're going to eat, but you're not going to eat as much as when you're going to Golden Corral. And so that's the same way it is with money. The more we have of something, the more we're going to spend of it. When the economy is great, I'm thinking like 2019, right? My entrepreneurs were asking me questions like, hey, Susanne, our office space is getting kind of tight. And I have a feeling we're going to grow. That space next door just became available. And I want to go ahead and acquire that lease. Now, I know that money's tight. I know that it's stretching our limits, but I have a feeling we're going to grow into it, right? Or they're like, hey, Susanne, I heard about those $25,000 tax deductions if I buy this big old heavy car, right? Or Susanne, can I go to Bora Bora and use that as a tax write-off? Can we do that together? And now when things are a little bit uncertain, the stock markets have started to drop, they're asking me questions like, okay, Susanne, how do I transition the virtual again, right? How do I get rid of this lease? Which heads can I cut, right? And keep operations going? Who's important here? What are the HR rules around letting people go, right? So the conversation's different based upon how much money there is. And that's the way we are. And so by creating that, I'm going to call it illusion of scarcity, when there's less money to use, then we're going to make very different decisions. So that's how Profit First works, is we create an artificial scarcity surrounding what's available to spend, but we fund our profit account first. We fund our owner's pay account first, so that we're really staying in line with why we started a business in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's important too, just to know yourself, right? I mean, I think for me, I've been doing it for so long now that I almost don't even look at my tax accounts and, my profit accounts. I just do the distributions and I don't even think about it anymore. But I have all my accounts in one bank. But I know some people, it's just easy to do a little transfer or do whatever. So I think if you have problems with that, it's best to maybe open up a different bank account somewhere else where you can put those things and then kind of forget about them and make it a little bit more difficult to get access to those, to transfer funds into your main spending account. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I hide bank accounts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's good. I mean, I was going to say it's similar with me. One of some of the practical stuff that really helped me with this system is I love the rhythm of it. We do it on the 15th and 30th of every month. So let's say we got in, $10,000 from customers or something in those 15 days. Then we split it up percentage wise. And I say, okay, 8% is going into profit, 45% is going to operating expenses, or whatever the preset percentages are we decided on, and all that gets distributed. But then it's like, okay, in my operating expenses, I can see, how much money is in there. So if I'm like, oh, I need to buy some new computers. All right, let me check and see what we've got in operating expenses. And I'm not seeing, oh, the $20,000 that we are saving for taxes, or the $30,000 or $40,000 that we have, or whatever it is in different accounts where I know I can't touch those. So like you said, it's like the artificial scarcity. And I think one of the analogies, it might be in the book or just in the a talk that Mike gave, but it was like the whole toothpaste analogy. And it's like, you got a toothpaste tube, when it's full, you're just like, oh yeah, I'll use as much as I want. It doesn't matter. But then when you get to the end, you're like, I'm just going to use a little bit because I'm on a trip and I don't want to buy more toothpaste. So I'll just use a little bit, and you'll start squeezing just a little bit out of it. And you just really use the last amount. And very similar, like you said, the envelope system. It's like, if you have $100 in your entertainment fund for the month, then you're going to be like, well, all right, what's the smartest way I can use this? Instead of just being like, oh yeah, let's go to the movies and buy popcorn or whatever. You might be like, okay, well, we could go to the movies, but let's go to the dollar theater and maybe we could eat before we go, or whatever it might be. Or like,
and sneak in a soda.
You just get a little more creative, and it just makes you more aware of it. And since you have limitations, it's just like, it's just the behavioral part of it is nice because it's just looking at your bank account, not looking at a spreadsheet or something. You're used to checking your bank account. So it's like, it's just the simplest thing in the world once you start doing it. And it just makes it so much less stressful. So those are the 5 different, what were the 5 accounts again? It's profit, owner's compensation. What am I missing? Taxes.
And OPEX.
And operating expenses. That's right. So and then you got your income account. That's like the one that comes into, and you disperse it from there twice a month. That's what we do anyway. And then I think we added on one that he says you can add at some point, which is like a savings account. If you decide you want to include like a savings account, which we also do.
Yeah, definitely. And, I've seen people, they have accounts for purchasing inventory. They might have reserve accounts later on for like if they have large purchases that they're building up to do, like maybe annual subscriptions that might be coming due that may be larger, or equipment purchases. They'll create accounts for those too. But that's a little bit advanced.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's been a huge game changer. Is there, what do you kind of recommend to people as far as getting started with it? What's the best way to do that?
So I always like to do is look at where are you at today. Take a look at your financial statements. What is your profit right now? And if there isn't a lot, which most companies, that's just how many companies are in America, which is why the SBA has the statistics that it does have, start with 1%. Start 1%. If you're already at 1%, start with 2%. I'm going to give you a link, profitmap.co, where you could actually go online, and we have, from a profit first standpoint, recommended percentages of what a healthy company looks like what percentage typically goes to profit, what percentage goes to owner's pay, tax, operating expenses that you're welcome to download so you can kind of compare where you're at and just build up to get to that point.
Perfect.
It sounds like too, you focus on tax strategies and things like that. I mean, is that something that you see that people really miss out on a lot, or aren't taking full advantage of the system, if you will?
Oh, definitely. I think, first of all, there's a problem in just the entrepreneurship mentality. It's all about, how do I get my taxes lower? And I see people scrambling to buy filing cabinets that they don't really need, or going out to buy these big old gas guzzlers. And at the end of the day, yes, you're cutting your taxes, but you're also cutting yourself, right? Because you don't have that profit to diversify into other assets, right? Or put into your retirement. And, as a tax accountant, and specifically dealing with profit first, I will never tell you, hey, Mark, go out and get some filing cabinets unless you really need some filing cabinets. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for ways of increasing your net worth while still getting a tax deduction. And so what that might look like is, maybe you're a closely held company. Maybe it's just you and maybe a spouse or another family member. Why don't we not just do a 401k, but let's really maximize this. We could get a defined benefit plan in there, which is a pension. We can put away, 50,000, 100,000, depending on how we set this up. Especially as a high net worth person, right? You're talking about 37% savings on the dollar for everything that we do. And you're still getting a tax deduction, right? But the difference is is that you're not spending it. You're just passing it from the right hand to the left hand. And you can always control how you're going to pull that money out, right? Which is going to affect your future tax level, but you're not being charged at 37%. Or let's say you have employees, right? And I know one of the things that's important to us is longevity, because, when I hire you day one, you're not going to offer a lot of value. But in 5 years, when you get really good at your job, you're going to be super valuable to me. And so maybe in my 401k, I'm not going to allow you to vest on day one. Maybe it's going to take you 2 to 6 years to fully vest. So we're not talking about a safe harbor plan. And so again, what I'm doing is I'm creating an incentive for you to stay with me. I'm offering you benefits that a lot of small businesses don't offer, but I'm also offering you the ability to also create wealth too. And if you leave me before you fully vest, well, guess what? You're going to forfeit your contributions, meaning that you don't get to take that with you when you go out the door if you have invested in that. And so what happens is that stays in my plan. And if I'm the last one standing, guess what? You just built my net worth, even though I've got a tax deduction all along. So those are just some of the things that we're going to work with our clients. I told you an example about my father hiring me. If you have your entity in a certain legal structure, maybe an LLC, that's a single member LLC, and you don't do the S corporation because maybe you don't need it, because once you're high net worth, it probably doesn't help you a whole lot, right? Now I can hire my children and I don't have to pay Social Security and Medicare on their earnings. And if they make less than a standard deduction, well, guess what? They don't have to pay federal taxes either. And so now, little Susie can go out and pay for her own dance classes, or little Susie wants to take us to Disney World. Oh, I love little Susie, So there's a lot of things that you can do from that standpoint. Or little Susie can invest in a Roth IRA and start putting away money for her college, right? So there's a lot of things that we can do other than cut our ankles by trying to cut Uncle Sam and just go out and buy a truck.
Yeah, I think that's the most common thing. And I'm always, it's like, I think before I kind of understood a lot of this stuff, there was always this feeling of like, okay, if I don't buy a new camera or a new computer, then I'm going to have to pay, however much, like say it's like I have to spend $7,000 in taxes, but if I buy $20,000 worth of equipment, I only have to pay like $2,000 of taxes. And then it's like, then I incur all this debt, in order to like not pay the $3,000 of tax, which is just like, well, maybe it would have just been cheaper if I would have just paid the tax and kept the other money, So yeah, I think that a lot of people for many years in a small business, you get so lost, or you're just trying to survive and you're trying to do things yourself using QuickBooks, and you're not really seeking professional advice. And so you're just leaving a lot of things on the table, opportunity wise, when, really, I would say, we started working with a CPA probably about like 6 years ago. And it really was like the best decision that like I ever made. It's like invaluable that the kind of help and knowledge that's when someone's doing this as their job, and they understand all the tax systems and all the loopholes and all these other kind of things. It's just really beneficial, I think, in order for you to grow your business and help you just experience a lot of the wealth and other things that you should be experiencing, but maybe you just don't understand or know is out there, And I think a lot of times too, people don't look into small business loans and all. I feel like there's a lot of grants and there's tons of stuff that's just not being utilized or used because people just don't know about it or how to go about it. So having a professional work with you to help you find all these benefits, I think, is invaluable.
Absolutely. I always say, every expense in your OpEx account, and I'm going back to profit first when I say operating expense bank account, it should produce an ROI, right? It should produce an ROI for you, including your accountant, right? If your accountant isn't covering their costs, isn't giving you a 3X, 4X, it's time to switch accountants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your book, how it differs from Profit First, and kind of what your goals are for the next, year and building your fractional CFO position and all these other kind of things.
So the book is written by Mike Michalowicz and I, so it is part of the Profit First family. So it does have a lot of the key concepts of Profit First. I think the biggest difference is it does deal with a demographic, right, that has been typically underserved, that maybe the first person to go to college in their family may not have friends that have had successful businesses. And so it really is a ramp up from that. So it takes it to that level of really strategizing with that business, how to have employees, how to manage those employees, how to manage difficult situations. People have told me the tax section alone, has saved them thousands of dollars because I definitely go into some pretty significant tax things. I look at the mistakes that I've seen people make as they have come to me and really show how to use it strategically in order to build wealth versus just go out and buy things. And it goes way beyond, the different legal entities, but it talks about how to use those legal entities strategically, right, in order to save taxes. For example, not every company needs to be an S corporation. I always go into a room and I go, how many guys are S corps? And I'll tell you, like 90% of people raise their hand. And then I go, that's not always the best legal entity for you, right? Because that if you're high net worth, first of all, it goes into your personal return, right? That you get a K1 and you're paying 37%. Maybe a C corp might be better to shelter some of that income in that 20% bracket. And so it really talks about, how to really think about taxes from a strategic standpoint versus a basic, this is an LLC, this is a sole proprietor. It goes way beyond that.
That's awesome. Where can people connect with you and, follow you online and all that kind of stuff?
So the best way to connect with me would be to go to marigagroup.com or download our profit map, learn more about Profit First through the profit map, find out what your allocations are, and you'll be able to get in touch with me there and get copies of our newsletter and little tidbits that I produce with Profit First.
That's awesome. And what was that profit map website again?
Profitmap.co. Not .com, .co.
.co. Got it.
Perfect. Well, listen, Susanne, it's been awesome having you on here. I'm glad that we could share the Profit First system again and share your story and how encouraging it is, and just glad to have you on the show. So, Ben, what are your takeaways for this episode?
Yeah, I got a couple of key takeaways, a couple of things you said, Susanne, that hit me. One thing you said was you are the MVP of your company and you should get an owner's pay. I think that's a great takeaway for a lot of people that are just think they have to grind for years and years before they can ever earn a penny. I think for most businesses, that's not true. You mentioned hiring your kids could be an excellent strategic write-off, so I'm filing that in the back of my brain. You mentioned creating artificial scarcity so that you don't spend more money than necessary. That's a great way of putting how Profit First works. And then another great takeaway, I think, was you said that make sure you're hiring an accountant that is giving you an actual return on your investment.
There you go. The fire, bringing the heat.
I'm just repeating what Susanne said.
I know. All right. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for tuning in to The Friday Habit. Go to thefridayhabit.com to find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit system that will show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business.
And if you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review in the Apple Podcasts app. If you have any questions for us or any topics you'd like us to cover or any people you'd like to see interviewed, go ahead and send us an email at hello@thefridayhabit.com.
That's right. And until next time, live every day like it's Friday.